Good evening and welcome to the Finance Committee's February 12th, 2025 meeting. The time is now 7:18 and we'll get started. We have our Fire Chief, Jack Glenn, here to present his budget.
Thank you.
So without...
I will try to get through this without any interruptions this time of any fires or any incidents. My deputy will handle it. So again, I'll start back real briefly. Our mission, I'll read it, is the mission of the Abington Fire Department is to provide all persons without exceptions protection from fire, emergency care at the advanced life support level, mitigate hazards, and work to prevent emergencies through public education and code enforcement. As I had said when I get started before, 2024 has been the busiest year in the history of the fire department. I believe off the top of my head, excuse me, we did approximately 600 to 700 calls more than we have any other year. Our call volume was 4,470 something, I believe. At first glance, you'd look and see that we had an increase in ambulance calls, but we also had an increase in everything else. There's a bunch of theories on why we would have more calls. Some people believe it could be from, with COVID and when COVID shut things down in 2020, it changed a lot of things. We're getting more mental health type EMS calls. We're getting a lot of calls for people that maybe don't have the means to take care of themselves. We're getting calls sometimes, I think, where people are making decisions between, do I pay the rent or I pay for my medical care. As far as ambulance revenues come in, we're right on par with what we normally do. So we're not seeing a huge increase or decrease. We're right on par with it. And I think part of that is we have a lot of multiple calls, and I did some research with it. So multiple calls is when we have two calls going on at once in the town. Last year, we did just under 1,480 instances where we had multiple calls going at the same time. That could be 2, 3, 4, 5 at the same time. It's an unheard of number. So when you hear us driving around, you hear all these lights and sirens, it's busy, it's real. And with that, a lot of times we're getting mutual aid ambulances from other towns. We have our two in operation that we go with. We rely on our off-duty help to come in and assist, and they do that as well. We man every piece of equipment we can when we have the ability to do so. But it's been incredibly busy. Fire prevention has gone through the roof. Our fire prevention captain, Cotter, he's nonstop because beyond all the permitting for all the projects that are going on, they've got some big projects that are going on. He does all the plan review. So he has to see that with the building department. So like the new station and DPW project, the project that's over at the MBTA, that big project there, I was involved with that as a captain before I was a deputy, before I was a chief. That's coming to fruition now. They're moving fast. He oversees all of that, as well as some of the other things, fireworks, permits, anything along those lines. And as I was talking about with the selectmen the other night, I call them
recording in progress.
The do-it-yourself projects, I call it, where a lot of handymen have taken it on themselves to do a lot of projects without maybe proper permitting or even any permitting, and we're discovering it when we show up on calls. And we handle it, whether it's with the health agent or building department. So we've seen an increase in a lot of that. One of a few challenges that we're getting faced with now is lithium batteries and electric vehicles. We're seeing many more electric vehicles and lithium battery issues. And not to be overly dramatic, but if you say you go on YouTube and you look up lithium battery fire, you could have a laptop battery, it can overheat. You can unplug it, leave it there. 3 days later, 3 weeks later, all of a sudden it can spark up. And if you've got combustibles in the room, it's like 100 times faster than, say, like a Christmas tree lighting on fire. And the specialized equipment we need for that. A certain type of glove. We have a blanket to remove because a firefighter going out in their normal gear, full gear and everything, can still get burned and still it can explode. So we've got to get that out of there. Then we've got the electric vehicles. And that's a huge problem because although we've been able to solve the disconnect with power, they plug in per charging system. We were able to get a piece of equipment, looks like a handle from a gas nozzle, and you actually plug it into the vehicle. It will kill all power while that's in there. So that provides us a little more safety, but the problem is, if we get an overheat or anything like that, all those electric vehicles are lined with batteries underneath, all those lithium batteries, they're all underneath. And if they catch on fire, you can put them out and cool them and cool them and cool them. You then have to have them transported to an open pit, which we have an agreement in Brockton with one of our dump areas. There's a blanket you have to put over them. They're $2,400 the blanket. We have an exchange policy with that dump truck so that, you know, the towing company, they tow it, they take the blanket, they give us a new one back. So we had to get that to get started, but we actually have to follow them in an engine over to this site. They put it in a pit, they observe it for 30 days.
Who's responsible for the cost of that blanket?
We are now with it right now. It's not something that insurance kicks back with. So that's what we have one. And then it's just an exchange thing. If it was something where we had to use it all the time, we couldn't afford that. We couldn't do it. Over in Norwell, when I lost my train of thought last time, but with Tesla, they had one in a car fire, and it went out, they put it out, and then 2 days later it lit up again. They actually had to fly an expert out from Philadelphia on scene to be able to go over it, and they had all these weird theories that they were doing with different things. They were literally putting vehicles in dumpsters filled with water, and then they were burying them in sand and a variety of things, and they're trying to figure things out, but the bottom line is they're just monitoring them. They're just keeping an eye on them at a safe distance and monitoring. So I hope it isn't happening tonight, but we haven't had one yet where we have to go and actually transport it, but we've had different ones overheating, power issues. So we're going to get them. We're going to get them, and so we've done an awful lot of training with them. The health department actually got a grant, and they actually had a pickup truck that's an electric vehicle. We were able to use that, and it's fascinating to see because you got a pickup truck, and you open the hood, and there's nothing under there. It's empty. It's like the old Volkswagen Bugs. But the lining underneath on the bottom of it is all batteries. So that's something new, and then obviously we have all the batteries, storage, and backup supplies for the houses. That's a biggie. So that's one thing that we're working towards to stay on top of. Another thing that we're really addressing and working with, and we're working with the police department with this quite a bit too, is mental health. We're seeing it more and more. When I first came on the department, it wasn't as accepted back then. It was, toughen up, kid, and, rub a little dirt on it. The mental health wounds that first responders are going through, you don't see them. They're not broken arms. You don't see those injuries, but they're there. And we want to keep our people healthy because trying to keep good people and trying to get good people, I'm biased, but we have an all-star team in Abington. I firmly believe that, and I'd say that to anybody. We have such a mix of experience and young energy that makes things happen on a daily basis in this town. And a lot of it you don't hear about in the news because there's a lot of things that you wouldn't report on. It could be, cardiac arrest resuscitation or things like that. You'll hear the newsworthy things with the traumatic calls, with the deaths or things along those lines, but there's so many things they do, and but we've got to take care of them. And we're seeing an increase in departments everywhere as far as mental health stuff goes. So we're doing a lot of training with that. We had a private screening recently from the Hope Foundation between myself and the police chief got together and of PTSD 9/11 movie, and it was a documentary about what people go through. And they had a firefighter, and they had a police officer, and a dispatcher, and the dispatcher was actually one of the dispatchers for the marathon bombings. And they showed how they went through it and how they progressed through different things. And the dispatcher sadly took her own life after this documentary was over with, and this was years later. This is where we prevent that, and this is where we're working on it. So we're taking the stigma out of it. We're talking about it a lot. We're trying to get more training with it. And it's important, and it's important to let people know that it's not like it was 30 years ago. You don't lose any of your so-called man card or credibility or anything else. It's like you're a human being, and what you give of yourself is why you're feeling the way you are. And so that's what we're doing. We're working hard with that. The police chief signed on with it as well, and we're doing that. So we're doing a lot of training with that. One of the other things we're doing is we're doing more cancer screening for the firefighters. This was something that a lot of guys before for years were like, I don't want to touch that, because out of sight, out of mind. They don't want to come to grips with that. We're not immortal, and
higher risk because of the
we
materials
are
you're
a
dealing
lot
with.
higher risk.
Yeah.
And so there's a test, and I work with the town manager with this, but there's a test that recently Brockton Fire did, and 2 of their members are stage 4 cancer that got picked up in this, and it didn't anyone else. And one of them was their union president over there. He was a terrific guy, well known to everybody, and he's fighting the good fight right now. And I talked with Scott about it a little bit, and then talked with Andrew, and I said, part of this is going forward with the newest standards for like the fire protection gear. They want certain testing being done, and part of that is the cancer testing. So what we're doing is we're offering it to our guys that you pay for it because you're going to show up for it that way, and then at the end they can be reimbursed to an account we have with it. But it's to encourage them. And talking to some of the other communities that have done this, they say it's fantastic because you can get on it ahead of time. And again, we want to protect our resources, because as much as we like fire engines and ambulances and stuff, they do nothing without the people that are in there. And these are great people. So we're working on that. And finally, some of the great things that's going on with us in the police department. I don't hide the fact that I absolutely love their management. Between Jeff and John, 2 of the most quality people you'll meet, and we've gotten together and we've done the active shooter training, which I think we've all been ready for a while. Our department has had gear, and we've been training for 5 or 6 years. We got together and did something at the high school the other day, and we hope we never have to use it. But we did it, and we're going to continue to keep doing it and working together, and no egos, and that's what's great. It's such a nice blend of the 2 departments, and we're going to get better and better with that and trying to work with each other on it. So those are some of the things we're working on. One of the other things that I'm trying to do, when I talked to the selectmen a little bit about the other night, is we're trying to condense our training a little bit differently, in that EMS, we're always getting training. We're very active with that, and we do it through M&M rounds, we call them, but basically it's continuing education, case reviews, and we do that. And a lot of our people have been called to basically say, hey, you did a great job. Can you show, 300 people, we want you to tell us how you did it. That happens all the time, but what doesn't happen all the time is someone that has 10 or 15 years of fire experience knows an awful lot more from experience than someone that's been on the job 3 years or 1 year out of the fire academy. So what we're doing is we're trying to condense things. We're taking little things that we can maybe do in-house rather than kind of making it just, routine. And twice a year, it's going to help the ISO ratings too, is twice a year we're working with Fall River Training Tower. We did it once already, we're going to do it in the spring, is we take an engine, one of our spare engines down there, and we work with their instructors. We go down there and we're using their fire tower, and they're lighting up hay bales, and we're going through and they're rescuing mannequins over ladders, and the younger guys are working with the older guys. The older guys may be a little humbled sometimes. The younger guys may be a little more confident. And it's so good to see the bonding with it. So that's important, because that's not something we're going to see as much as we're going to see someone feeling ill every day. So that's kind of where we're at. As far as any type of awards, I did mention on here that this year we nominated 7 people for the Firefighter of the Year award with the state. And they got recognition as, they didn't get recognized up on the stage, but they got recognition letters back, and that was for the fire at 500 North Quincy Street we had. That had potential to be an absolute tragedy. It was 91 units there, 90 of them were occupied, and they had a fire, and when our guys pulled up, they literally, one of them reported the second engine pulled up, and they were trying to locate, Holbrook was there with them, they're trying to locate, what the origin of the fire, and it's a U-shaped building with garden-style apartments. One of our guys pulled up in the engine and said, we have people jumping off the second and third floor balconies. This is on the opposite side of the fire. So there's a lot of smoke going throughout. Long story short, transported 1, evaluated 1, had a report that there was someone still missing in the fire floor. It was a miscommunication from someone. We went through, the person that was transported did not have life-threatening injuries, but it could have been unbelievable. And the amount of work that people did in the first 10 minutes, made the difference. We've worked with the building owner since then, and they've agreed that they're going to retrofit the attics with a sprinkler system. They're not required to, they've never had to because they were grandfathered in. But they understood the importance of it because we showed them what potentially could have happened. So that was something we were very proud of. I would have loved to seen all 7 of these guys, as well as the whole work that I had nominated, up on the stage getting their Firefighter of the Year awards, but there are Firefighter of the Year awards. I couldn't be prouder of them. We also got a grant from the State Fire Equipment Grant I just found out about like 2 weeks ago. And the maximum we could get for our size community is $19,000. We got $18,600. We're getting 2 new thermal imaging cameras, state-of-the-art thermal imaging cameras, which ours are getting older. And those we actually got in a national grant that I wrote 10 years ago, so we couldn't double jeopardy it and go. But we got this through a state grant. They're on the way. And the multi-gas meters that we use, we've got 4 of them for each one of the first line apparatus. And what that does is, someone says they smell something, or there's possible gas leak or anything like that, carbon monoxide, we can go in there and it's reading off what we've got. Because carbon monoxide, you can't taste it, you can't smell it, you can't see it. It's the silent killer, they call it. So this gives us that ability to do that. So we've got that coming with no added cost to the taxpayers.
We just had in the news, I don't know if anyone else saw it.
Maine.
I
heard about it
two
tonight.
officers that went to the house and.
Yeah, like 7 people I think were treated.
Yeah, but
So-
the 2 officers that went in first to save the little boy, they all ended up with carbon monoxide poisoning.
And it takes a while to clear the system too. So it's years ago they used to do the hyperbaric chambers, and now it's like they really have to go to specialized facilities. In Boston, I think Rhode Island's another one, but we had actually one in town probably a month ago. Someone was working under one of those, the portable carports, just like the cloth ones with the frame. They were cold, and they were running a heater out there while they're working on a car. And one of the buddies collapses, and the other one was kind of half out of it and called someone and said, something's wrong. He started going on. Our crews got there. They could tell as soon as they pulled up. They're like, it's got to be this. And it was off the charts. So they transported both. They're both doing well. But again, these meters are on the way there. We're continuing to look for ideas on anything to do with grants. If I could find a way to make dinner for Congressman Lynch to get more money for the station, we would have done that too. It's like anything we can do, we're trying to do. We've got more people that are getting interested in the grants. The problem with the federal grants, they call it the AFG grant, the Assistance to Firefighters grant, we're a product of our own success. I was initially the one who was writing. We started it in 2010 when John took over. They only really award high priority items, and you're competing against every department in the country. Every single high priority item that's on there, we've received through the grant. So it's a product of our own success. It's great, but we've got to continue. So as far as one capital thing that we're looking at, I haven't even had a chance to tell Scott yet, but one of the capital things we're looking at, not this year obviously, but in a couple of years, is our SCBA bottles. We've found now through a group pricing, we're chipping away at it, so we're probably not even going to need that 2 years from now, which is a huge savings for the town. We can get it through the operating budget as long as we're careful on other things, and that's kind of what we're looking at. We're really being cautious because we know what the town's up against.
Are those the breathing?
The actual, so we've got the packs, and we can have those retrofitted, but the bottles, they're only certified for 15 years. And we got those bottles, and we got the packs in the grants. So we're working on those. And the other thing that we're working on now too is trying to get more fire gear for people, because they're only certified for 10 years. And now with all the PFAS stuff that's going on, now they're going to be making, I know Scott's involved with it at the state level, so he's got a good baseline knowledge on that, is we have to try to get safer gear that doesn't have the carcinogens as much in the actual gear for the guys. So we're working on that, but we're being extra cautious with our budget. Any questions on any of that?
No.
Okay. So if you want to get to the budget, I will tell you that we are at full staff for what we've had. We've got 4 6-person shifts. We have the fire prevention captain, who is kind of a jack of all trades. We have the deputy and myself. Every one of us is certified as a paramedic in the department. And how I explained that to the selectmen the other night was, Not only are you going to get your firefighters that are going to be there, but you get a double bang for the buck. It's because you need that EMS, and you're going to get the highest trained EMTs you can at your doorstep in 2 or 3 minutes. And the results have kind of spoken for themselves. I won't, belabor that point. I will, if we wanted to get to the budget, I can kind of make it, I guess the clearest way I can tell you is everything on the salary side is strictly just collective bargaining stuff. It is what it is there.
Union contract.
For the highlights on the expense side, the only 2 things that we really, with the exception of the small, percentage increase on certain things that we had to do, the only major things we're seeing there is our portion of dispatch, Holbrook dispatch, that portion was an increase. And then the other thing was the increase in vehicle maintenance, repair, and EMS supplies. And the things we're running into with the vehicle maintenance stuff, a lot of it's the emissions stuff with like the new engine and the new tower. These aren't fire engines that you can crawl underneath anymore with a little skid board and crawl up in there. Everything's computerized. And we have a program with Marcus at the Highway Department that we share, and he can diagnose it, but Marcus is one guy taking care of everybody in the town. And that poor guy, we try everything we can to try to fix our stuff in-house, but he's an amazing guy. He gets so much done. He can't focus on every single one of our vehicles, and some of the stuff, with all the emissions stuff, it could be an 18-hour job for something. So what's happened for us in the last couple of years is we've had to send them out to actual vendors, and it's expensive. And I think that's going to be that way going forward. John used to belabor the point when he was chief and said, I wish they'd give us some kind of a waiver on some of the emission stuff. We literally, we burn through turbochargers because of sometimes you don't burn it off enough. We actually took our, since we got stuff repaired, we actually took our tower truck the other day. We had to return some mannequins to Plymouth. And I actually had the deputy say, can you take the tower truck? We'll take it out of service 20 minutes, open it up on the highway, and that's what the mechanics say, and just try to open it up. So we're doing everything we can to maintain it, but the costs are going up. And we got walloped at the end of the year, fiscal year last year, and we got walloped at the beginning of this year, and we're hoping for the best that we're going to make it through. But that's something that it's increasing, and it's something we can't not do. We have to maintain those vehicles, and we're doing everything we can on our end. We've actually got a more condensed, more organized maintenance plan, and that's kind of some of the things we worked on this year that we're really trying to make sure that, okay, here's the reminder here, this is coming up for an oil change in this one. Marcus, Wednesday's our day, can you fit us in on that day? And we've got our guys doing that, but that's something we just can't prevent against. We have to maintain those vehicles. And
where does that show up?
That's on, yeah, let me see it. It's the one, there you go. That's it right there.
Vehicle supplies.
Yeah.
Vehicle supplies.
So basically, it's gone up about 15,000, and honestly, that may not be enough, but that's our best guess based on what we've done. And then the line underneath it for the municipal, that's our portion of Holbrook Communications. We have another year left in the contract after that. I'm working with Director Hook from over there, seeing what we can do going forward after that as far as with the contract, and he's trying to do some things at the state 9/11 level, no guarantees. One of the things they've brought to the table for us, beyond a million things, programming radios, whatever, with the new station, they're filing for a grant, and there's no guarantee, but they've never not been successful with a grant, I guess is the best way of putting it. If this grant is successful, like we hope for and anticipate, they're going to save us probably about $800,000 in equipment for the new station off of that. So they're doing an awful lot beyond normally what, other groups would do.
The $300,000 generator that does town hall.
Yes.
Yes.
That was
That's
also
from them.
paid by
Yes.
them.
Yes.
100%.
So we're getting our money's worth from that, and it was
And you're
5
happy
year.
with that, with the
Well, we
way
knew
this?
this was coming. This
Yeah.
isn't a surprise.
Right.
It's part of the.
We are happy with the product, because I remember probably 10, 15 years ago, we tried to look into how we could do it ourselves, and at the time, the cost for, like fire and police, it was outrageous. And even then, you had to go through the updated EMD training for them, and then you have to go through benefits and everything else. We're getting so much for the money that we get. It's not perfect, like nothing's
And
perfect.
we would actually be competing against them to
Correct.
try and get equipment.
Right.
And they're the preferable,
Right, because they're.
the state is
Yes.
going to always
Right.
want that.
Because they're,
Yeah. Yeah, if you walk into where their center is, it literally looks like NASA. It's incredible, the equipment they have now, and they're good. I can reach out to, I've known Steve Hook, the director, for 30 years, and I can text him right now and say, listen, we're having a problem with a repeater or whatever. He found a problem we had, and we thought it was the $370,000 worth of radios we got in a grant 2 years ago. And he said, no, I think it's that one little repeater thing that you guys have in the back closet there that does this or whatever. And I'm like, Steve, it's not. It's turned off. He goes, I'm telling you, I think that's what it is. And he goes through the town, he's doing this, he goes, I think that's it. Well, what happens is, with this radio, he was right. Sure enough, it was off, but we didn't completely disconnect it. So every time we had a power outage and it switched over to the, it kicked on. So we had a fire at 439 Washington Street, you know, the specialty home, you know,
Yeah.
about former Doc Whiting's, we had a gas propane leak. And it was so frustrating, and you could hear us halfway, which was good because I was a little frustrated with National Grid, so I probably didn't sound as accommodating. But yeah, he picked that off right away, and their expertise. So yeah, they're definitely an asset for us. Those are the only two things out of my budget that you're going to see a substantial with it. But again, it's level services. It's not. We're watching everything we can. We're trying to hold off on certain things throughout the year, training-wise, to see where we're at, and then go. We're confident, unless something drastic happens, that we're going to be able to meet our budget this year on both sides of the coin.
The specialist stipend is up 50%. That's up
Which up in
salary.
salaries.
Yeah.
Again, that would be contractual. That's the guys just signed a new 3-year
Yeah.
CBA with the town, and they agreed to it and signed on it. So for me,
can you just explain what the specialist stipend is, just so everyone?
the specialist stipend can be anything from our EMS coordinator, that he coordinates all of our emergency medical services. Some departments have an EMS captain. We don't have that. We have the amazing Justin Silva, who makes sure that we have all the Con Ed stuff we need, make sure everybody stays certified, make sure the ambulances meet up to expectations on the inspections. The inspectors, it's so meticulous. Literally, they'll show up, and if there's a little bit of body rust around the corner, you get it knocked down. These ambulances have to be in tip-top shape to the point where our assistant EMS coordinator is counting how many bandages there are because it's minimums and things. So that's one. Another one would be public information officers. That's Kyle Garrier. I used to do it before, but I can text him at any point and say, here's a press release, Kyle, can you get this out here? We have a press conference coming up here. Can you get this to the media here? I need to get them to speak with us on that. He does the social media stuff, but he also is learning how to prepare that
We're
stuff.
doing more of that this year?
But
If there's more of that going on this year, that it's,
well, I think there's more of it, but I think the other thing too is with a contract, if they have increases in the contract, that's what it is.
It's not just one person, it's multiple people
It's
who
multiple
actually get that. And that was part of the 3-year agreement, that there was an increase to their specialist stipends. They also took a small COLA.
Yeah. My best guess, Chris, is I'm thinking there's probably a dozen positions that are part of that. So it's like the town manager said, it's not just one person.
but how many positions were last year?
It's the same number. There weren't any added.
So that-
It might be
you got
just
a
increases.
50% raise?
Per position.
Yeah, nice. Okay.
Well, it's, how much is the typical stipend amount, I guess, is the,
Not a lot. And off the top of my head, I believe for the year, it's some of them are probably 800 or 1,000. One of the reasons why, and I'm not involved as far as the collective bargaining and saying yes or no, but obviously the town manager asks input, and so does the Board of Selectmen or anybody that asks. We've got to stay competitive. Civil service made some big changes this year, and it's still confusing to a lot of us because we're civil service with the fire department. They have a new thing called the 50-50 rule, and I'm going to a class next week to find out about it. So sometimes you can hire someone now, even though you're civil service town, not from civil service. Before it was Abington had civil service employees, you can't transfer to another department without both chiefs signing off. You could take the test, and if you take the civil service, you can go on their list for whatever. Now, there's a potential that you're gonna see people getting pilfered from other departments. So we've got to make ourselves competitive, one, to draw it, to keep the best people, but if we have an opening, we want to draw them in. And my
So somewhere in
opinion,
the contract, we made this change, and we're stuck with it, so.
Yep. I guess that's the
All
basic
right, next.
bottom line.
yeah, no, absolutely. And good question, that's what we're here
Monopolize the
for,
question.
honestly.
The other question I have is, what happened in fiscal year '23 actual to overtime? Seemed like it was always in the 350, 360 range. Then all of a sudden, in fiscal year '23, it was down to 267. Now it's back up.
I can't,
What did we do right?
well, Mike, what do you mean? What did we do right?
You used a lot less overtime.
Back there?
Yeah.
So I think some of it is their rates go up, and when they're, like with their salary, so if they're making a certain amount per hour, well, now they're making a little bit more per hour, that's one of them. I can't speak to that back there with 267, I can't tell you that. I think a lot of
But I
it,
mean, in '22, it was 360.
Yeah.
So somehow it went down.
yeah. I honestly, at that point, I think I wasn't the chief at that point.
No? Okay.
So I don't know, I can't speak to it because I'd be giving you an inaccurate answer, I
Okay.
don't know.
All right.
Theorizing, but just to give you an idea, and it's interesting because I know Greg had brought it up, I think, last year, and he said, what if we took this 400,000 or whatever, and we just got rid of it and hired people? It's cheap, but beyond all this, it's cheaper to pay people overtime than it is to hire the number of people you need to maintain with benefits and stuff. But the other part of it is, too, is you're still gonna have multiple calls. You're still gonna have people coming in off duty. You're still gonna have people on a change of shift. You still have to cover. So you never totally eliminate that. It's a great idea to look at each time, but
We've looked at extensively.
Absolutely.
Done
I'm not
study.
arguing that. I'm
No.
just wondering
Yeah.
what happened.
I wonder if it
How
could
did
have been,
how did we fix it one year and
yeah,
then,
I wonder
was it
if
an
back,
aberration for some reason?
yeah, I can't remember.
If you
I'm
look
wondering if it was, go ahead,
I
Sarah.
was just gonna say, if you look at other lines in FY '23, some others are up. And looking at the salary total, it sort of balances out.
Yeah.
Where overtime is down, but
Well, if you go down to the bottom.
salaries are down, overtime
Right.
is down, but
The
then if you go
salary
down the
total.
list, others are up. Yeah, so 20.
Observation.
Absolutely.
I
No.
look at numbers. That's what I get.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, what are these fees from? Is this just like if you call an ambulance and then either you pay or your insurance pays, or
Okay, that's what you.
on this, yeah, I went back a bit.
Administration fees.
Where does this money come from?
Oh, Pro EMS, the second one?
Yes.
So the second one, so what happens is we contract with Pro EMS to do our collections for the ambulance service. And again, it's similar to like Holbrook. They do the collections for us. We then pay them a percent, so they get 4%.
Okay.
So they pay us 100%, and then that's what those fees are, the 4% back.
Okay, so,
Well, it's not 4% in that, but we basically figured out it's part of a line item too. But again, years and years ago, before I was even a captain, we tried to do billing ourselves, and it was a disaster. And with Medicare and insurance, Pro EMS is incredible. And so every year we have to do a survey, and it's an extensive survey to get Medicare reimbursement back, and an extensive one. It's usually in the area of about 150,000. Alexis, our administrative assistant, is so good at it now, which is great because I started pulling nerve ends out when we were doing it before, and she's so good. But Pro EMS gives us all the statistics we need. I can call Ethan, is my main guy. We can call him. We'll have all the statistics we need. I called him 2 months ago and said, where are we as far as rates go? What are we charging? Where are we? And he said, you guys are pretty much in line with what other communities are doing. Because what happens is if we start to charge higher rates, insurance companies are only going to reimburse us so much. it's gonna fall on the taxpayer with it. We're not gonna get half of it back anyways with it, but he said, you're right in the area where you need to be. There's maybe one category you could, a little bit, but it's not gonna make a difference. So we're constantly on that, but yeah, and answering your question there, that's, that's where it's coming from.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
What's up there, that's revenue, right? That's what we charge them?
That's what we pay.
That's what we receive.
That's what we receive.
Yeah, that's kind of revenue.
yes.
Yeah.
So right now, yeah, I was gonna say, well, I'm looking at I apologize, my eyes with the gray boxes, yeah. Yeah, so we're on, last year, I believe we did 1.4 million in collections.
Yeah.
We were a little higher. We're on pace to keep that same pace right now, but again, you can't judge.
No.
I will tell you though, I
it is,
love the
yeah.
fact that
Yeah.
it's not, it used to be based, they used to base our salaries a lot of times on some of the salaries by paying for that, and I always felt like it was a conflict of interest.
I just want to make sure that anyone looking at home knows
Absolutely. No,
that's a revenue item.
that's what we
not
bring in.
expense.
Big
Bring in
expense.
money.
Yeah, that's what we bring in,
Yeah.
And out of that, you pay
4%.
4% to the company to make sure, because I know certain insurance companies are notorious for not reimbursing
No.
at the rate that they're supposed to.
Pro EMS is phenomenal, and I went to a recent chiefs meeting in the county, and we were talking about it with some of the other chiefs, and they were all asking what it is, but Pro EMS is great, and we're very happy with what we're getting from them. And you had asked a question, I think last year, Bob, you were on, you were Greg last year, and you had asked about certain companies, if certain companies were reimbursing less, that you had heard that, and I followed up with it, and wasn't the case. We haven't seen a drop-off in any of the companies that we're collecting from. There hasn't been any. So it's been good. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Made it through without a fire.
All right, look at that.
Boy,
I'm proud. There you go. Thank you all. I say it every time, but thank you
Thank
guys
you
all
very much,
for the time you guys
Jack.
put in. This is, it's volunteer, we know, and it's a lot of your time, and it's tedious, so, but thank you.
Thank you very much. We're glad
We need
everything's
the checks
going
and
good.
balances. We got a great department, we want to keep it that way. So.
Real quick, do you want to
Yeah.
plug, when is groundbreaking or anything like that going on?
Okay, so the update, Sean had given it before, if all things go well. So phase one's going on right now, and what phase one is the driveway to the right of the police station. Then they're gonna be putting, in the far back corner, will be a giant salt shed that'll replace the two that are falling apart for the DPW. Halfway up is gonna be the new fuel island, and it's gonna be an above-ground fuel island, which obviously is much safer and will last a lot longer. That's phase one. Once phase one's completed, then they can go to phase two. Phase two will begin with the DPW vehicles, all, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Scott, but all the DPW vehicles will be at the North School, will be chained in, there'll be locked and secured there. And then phase two, once that's done, they will demolish the two salt sheds. They're gonna be relocating the basketball courts. I think they're still looking at where they're gonna be doing it, but they've got a couple ideas in mind, and the old DPW station. And then from there, they're gonna build, so I think it's January of 2027, I think they were hoping for, but again, you just don't know.
to be in,
Yeah.
To be in,
to be in.
I'm quite,
Groundbreaking for phase two, I think we were looking at late summer, maybe fall.
yeah. And I'm such a nerd. Every morning on the way in now, I drive by Central Street just to watch dirt move. I do. It's exciting. I didn't know if I'd see this in my career, never mind my lifetime. It's something that needed for a long time. It's a lot of hard work for people. Police chief and I have talked about it. Even Marcus, he said this is going to be so beneficial from the highway, having those vehicles there. Because a lot of times when we're up at Route 18 and we have an air leak with the tower, well, you can't leave the tower outside in this weather because the pipes will freeze up. So you gotta have it locked and secured. Marcus can come over and grab it at his convenience when he can. He walks 35 yards or whatever to go do it. So it's gonna be so beneficial for all of us. It's exciting. It's pretty awesome.
Happy to hear it.
Yeah, so I am that nerd literally that goes by and watches and says, wow, they pulled that tree down. That's so cool. Just loving it. So,
Well, we appreciate you taking the time, Jack.
thank you. Thank you guys,
very
seriously.
much.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Thank you.
You hanging in there, Greg? Yes, he is.
Is he still there?
He is.
Greg, I miss seeing you in person. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you
I
very
wish
much.
I wish I was there, man. Sorry I wasn't there.
All right, buddy. Have a good night.
You too. Thanks.
Take care, guys.
All right, with that, we'll move on to Social Vocational Technical School with Tom Hickey, the superintendent. Good evening. Good evening.
I've never seen you so much in my life.
I'm telling you,
Boy, I
Twice a
know.
month.
what are we going to do? Got a lot to talk about. So thanks for queuing this up. I'll walk through the presentation at a reasonable pace. You've seen a lot of the format I've brought to you in the past. I'll get to a couple of slides to talk about numbers, Abington's lower assessment that we're projecting for 26. And then there's another document, I think, Andrew, you had also, which just kind of shows where we come up with the assessment numbers, and I could spend a little more time there if you'd like, and we'll go from there. So the presentation, this is a modified presentation of what I would have made to the school committee, and essentially showing some overall celebration of accomplishments and some recent community outreach. So much of this you would have heard me talk about leading up to the building project. High student enrollment, strong co-op, over 400 applications for 180 student freshman class, strong MCAS results, a new 9th grade class from Marshfield, and some national medal winners in our Skills USA competition in design visual communications, which was great, and Future Farmers of America, kids from our horticulture landscape program, won a gold medal in nursery landscape at a competition in October in Indianapolis, first Massachusetts team to win in recent memory, so we're very proud of them. Under other, we've been the recipient of some pretty big state grants to run adult ed. We're continuing to do so. We're seen as the admin that oversees us doing a great job. And a totally organic, locally grown fire cadet program that we run after school. And this was the brainchild of local fire chiefs. How do you, if fire science isn't a vocational program, where are kids able to get a dose of anything in this area? So a few years ago, with volunteer instructors and the like, we wanted to partner on this. And so kids are provided with hands-on and classroom instruction. There's no course credit. It's at a lower level, but Senator Keenan had secured some money in the state budget so that we're able to continue this program. So it's very well regarded, and looking forward to continuing that partnership. And as you know, we revised our regional agreement, most notably how we're calculating debt share. That was the last seminar, right? We can skip that. The next several slides, just to emphasize how grateful we are on the win-win community outreach. Abington this is just recent memory, last year plus, but anytime that there's a municipal project, an idea where we want people in our towns to say, I wonder if the Voc Tech could, and then there's a blank. And as many times as we can say yes, we want to say yes. I had someone, Scott, reach out to me just this week about, hey, do you think there's something we could do at, is it Griffin's Dairy?
Griffin's Farm, yeah.
Griffin's Farm, right. And so it was like, yeah, well, let's find out more. Is it community preservation? What's going on? How can we stretch the dollars? So whenever there's a municipal project, whether it's you bring something to us and we fix it, we go somewhere and we make something look better. It gives the kids real-world experience. They are constantly talking about, I can see graduates from 20 years ago who will tell me every single municipal project they've ever, I did that, I fixed that, I remember going to that senior center and doing this, so anyway. Plenty of great projects that we, and so as you're spinning your wheels with what programs we offer and where the needs are in town, it's really an open invitation on that. Last week I had a request from a nonprofit in Cohasset wanting to talk about, T-shirts for, a fundraiser for a run, so in our graphics program. So much more to be said. Thanks, Andrew. We'll get so past the community outreach and what we're trying to do in other towns. Our goals for the upcoming year, we have an accreditation visit from New England Association of Schools and Colleges. In the post-MCAS ballot question, all school districts are looking at competency determination, which I summarize it as, you got to pass all your classes, So MCAS is still being offered. I mean, I think that's gotten lost in that ballot question. So the state still expects school districts to take MCAS, have kids take MCAS. So it's part of the state budget, and that is because part of the state's accountability system is to still see how kids do on this standardized test, but the high-stakes nature of it has been removed. So you'll hear a lot more chatter about competency determination. What is it, you have to pass all your classes, and what else do you need to do? For us right now, the messaging is, well, our 9th and 10th grade curriculum was rooted in what you need to do to pass 10th grade MCAS, or maybe it's 9th grade in science. So it's essentially, well, we'll just stick to that. You know, you've got to pass those courses. And so that's an ongoing conversation. Like many school districts, we're taking a look at our cell phone policies. You know, how do we make kids allergic to their cell phones? And how do we disrupt what is becoming a prevalent issue, a distractor, et cetera, while at the same time acknowledging we have generations of young adults and their parents who are not going to telephone the main office when they need to get in touch with their child. So we have to acknowledge that there are means of communication, time and place, where can, and most importantly, I suppose, is, you know, what is enforceable? You can write a really rigid, strict handbook, and then by Columbus Day weekend, you realize, wait, we can't enforce this, so why are we doing that? So staff are having conversations on that. Looking at service expectation goals, I talked about continued partnerships. And professional development theme this year has been artificial intelligence. Where does that fit into the vocational technical high school? Where does it fit into various industries? And we're getting some good feedback on that. You've seen this slide from me since fiscal 13, which is essentially we build our budget from zero, accepting, of course, you know, our obligations that we have, but ultimately it is something that we're looking at. I have enjoyed, I guess maybe that's a euphemism, but I have appreciated the fact that I've never had to bring a budget forward where I have multiple capital items in the same year. And that is because I've been able to get departments to buy into the idea that we have a limited sum, we can't outpace what the towns can afford, but if we're really sharp with our planning, we can feather things in. And grants don't hurt. And so we haven't had to build in a lot of equipment grant money, and we have our shops to help with maintenance, and you can expect from me, you know, reduced, we're going to make sure everything is safe and everything is clean, but I'm not going to be asking for any big maintenance asks for obvious reasons for the next several years. This is the most important slide in the whole presentation. This summarizes where, what's the theme or what's the push here for the fiscal 26 budget. Overall increase is 4.44%. I'm obligated, we've always done it this way, the operating and capital are always together. So there's about 90 grand of capital in the $16.9 million budget. I'm also listing debt service, but let me walk you through the green section first. Our enrollment is up, but the state aid isn't very impressive. And I think that has a lot to do with low inflation factor baked into the foundation budget. And the other factor is if K-12 enrollments dip even slightly and ours go up slightly, the state formula immediately for 1 year shifts those minimum local contribution dollars. So I've had years where we've had increased enrollment and I've seen a decent state aid increase. But when you look under the hood, it's like, wait a minute. We're up 30-something kids last year, we're up 19 kids this year, and the dollars aren't following that. And so my best analysis right now is, well, if the state says a town can afford to pay this for the minimum, and there's a slight shift in enrollment, they're going to shift those dollars first before they backfill it with any additional state aid. So modest increase, less than modest increase. Better story, it seems, right now with regional transportation. We are putting into this budget, and therefore into town assessments, an estimated 90% reimbursement. So the governor's budget called out for more regional transportation. We're thrilled. We're going to use that number. It's typically around 80, but we're going to use the 90. And if it ends up after the sausage gets made and the budget gets settled up on Beacon Hill, if the number is a bit lower, we'll have to own that. We don't go back. But we wanted to front load what we think is a reasonable projection for transportation costs. The third bullet, another revenue source we're going to use for next year. I've asked the school committee to cover the first-year interest payments for the building project. It's a small sum of money, relatively speaking, but given the transition of towns going from special district election to spring town meeting, and how much is it? It's not a lot, but we saved the money. You let us save the money. We spent the money on the feasibility study. It came in under budget. We think it's going to come in about 300 grand under budget. We've got more money in stabilization. So once the financial advisors say, hey, you can release that money, it won't adversely affect your bond rating, I think we probably have another $1 million that we could eventually push back in at some point in the project to do something to assist. So this 315 grand is not Abington. It's the aggregate amount of interest. So when you go deeper into this other document that you have, you'll see a debt service line, and you'll see a stabilization revenue line that washes it out. The cost increases, every zip code, every municipality, town administrator, superintendent, once more, sing it with me, Plymouth County Retirement Assessment, health insurance, and we've got some more additional transportation costs with our adding another town. Those are the biggest operational drivers. I reduced the capital budget from fiscal '25. Capital in our world for the foreseeable future is about vehicles only. We're doing fine with equipment, and like I said earlier about the infrastructure of the building itself. But I do think from our long-range analysis, we probably need a couple $100,000 a year. I've got stabilization money for bus replacements. If I can come up with a sustainable capital number as we're growing the enrollment, and also replacing buses. So we have a very good bus replacement plan. And we also have some of those shop vehicles you might see if you see the vans going around town. We typically have like a 13-passenger shop van, the carpentry kids, the HVAC kids, the allied health kids, and some have trailers as well. So that's been reduced. We did a closer analysis. I don't need to replace any buses. So ideally, for fiscal '27 and beyond, that's something where I might try to come back with a higher number. But that's where I see our capital needs in the near future. The yellow section is, what am I adding into the budget that if I didn't have to, we could take a closer look at it. For some reason, numbers were really tight. I have come to you for several years looking to incrementally move positions from grants onto budget. And so even though there's a lot of uncertainty at the federal level with grants, this is part of just a philosophy of just, we're going to keep these positions, we need these positions. If we can incrementally move them by a bit, it will help in the long run. I've got 2 shop teachers that are partially funded on a federal Perkins grant. This is just continuing in that model. What I'm hoping for is that by fiscal '29, I will not need that grant for personnel, and it will be the grant that I use to hire the first veterinary science teacher and possibly a technical aide. We will hire those in prior to the '28-29 school year. So that's the move. They're just trying to move it without overdoing it, but getting to a point where we're going to expand programming. I've told you before that we can't balloon the operating budget just because we're ribbon cutting on a new building in 3 years, 3 school year, '28-29 school year. We can't immediately expand the enrollment, but I know my top priority obligations are opening a new VOC program. I need that teacher, maybe a teacher and an aide, and a second plumbing teacher, and probably another custodian, and probably at least 1 more bus driver. So my messaging, if you were to ask me, where do you think personnel needs would go, that's absolutely at the top of the list, because even if I open this building with the same number of kiddos or a few more, those are absolutely the operational needs. So that's not, what's reflected here are these micro moves to try to get us into a position that we could be able to meet the moment when we get to fiscal '29. Similarly, the English learner position, the special ed team chair, and then I have a culinary arts aide. So if I were asked the question, if you had to make cuts, where would you cut? The answer would be the capital line, because I think we could suck it up. It just would create a bit of a gap. We would strategically kick that can. And these positions here, which would just give me, I think I'm going to need another para for our increased English learner population, but I haven't been asked for it. But making that English learner special ed teacher move onto the budget is going to free up a little more Title I money, even if it's level funded. So I think it's a modest approach, but one that doesn't lead to huge spikes in assessments. So those are the biggest drivers. Thanks, Andrew. The next slide here. Oh, I'm sorry, that was the busiest slide. Can I answer any questions off of that slide before I? Okay, thank you. The next slide is just to give you a little deeper dive as to the types of grants we get, plus that the adult ed stuff we do at the top. So the Perkins grant, IDEA, that's special education. Title I, Title IIA is mostly professional development, and Title IV is professional development, student enrichment. These are entitlement grants. There's a formula. You have to apply for them, but based on certain criteria, these are the grants that we get. And if you ask me what staff do you have on grants, the answer I'd give you is it's mostly on that IDEA grant, other than what I've said. I'm carrying maybe 4 paraprofessionals for special education needs on that grant.
Are these state grants, federal grants?
Federal grants.
Federal grants.
Yeah.
Any concerns? You don't know yet?
I don't know yet. I always build off of a level-funded premise. Most of these grants are released in the spring, so the timing is very clunky. Released in the late spring, summertime deadline. We try to write them as quickly as possible, so we know that it's there. I would say as of right now, no, but you could ask me a month from now, and I'm watching things like everybody else. We're going to need to use grants, but just because it's called an entitlement grant, it kind of gives you the feeling of, oh, well, it's always going to be there. So we now know that isn't necessarily the case. But we've been acting as if that weren't the case for several years. Thank you. Next slide is just enrollment. You know the story there. Continued slight uptick, continued uptick in overall in-district enrollment, as you'd expect. Thank you. Abington's enrollment is down 9 students from 114 to 105. I think that's an aberration. I think we're going to see an increase. I will be back. I'm sure I'll be back in front of you, not with the same story two years in a row. And the next slide is what you've heard me say in the past. What exactly goes into a town assessment? The minimum local contribution is most of it. We wait for the governor's number to drop, and then we look at the state aid, and we get out our Kleenex, and then we figure out what the difference is, and then we put our assessments together. Capital, which is stuff that's called capital that we don't borrow for, is a 3-year look back. Those are the buses and the vehicles I mentioned. Operating costs above the MLC and transportation, we use the most recent October 1 report. So I think we're about 6% over net school spending. So if you need to, what do you need to run the schoolhouse that the state thinks that is beyond that? What's beyond the state's formula? That's other costs above the minimum. And then the debt service is what you've heard me talk about as we transition into a 4-year rolling average with our new town Marshfield on a slightly different debt schedule. So we're implementing that. That has been approved by the department. Abington's story, I've put this slide out the last few years just to show if there's these are the numbers here that I look at this line, enrollment and assessment, because I think to me, for the person that's looking at it real quickly, what they expect to see is if enrollment's going up, okay, the assessment's going up, because our assessments stick out like a sore thumb on town warrants. A town wants to keep costs with a certain percentage, 2.5%, 3%, and then there's this one, and it says 11. And then the year after that, it says -17 or something. So it's one of the more volatile numbers, including oddly asking for less. And that that happens some years. This happens to be one of them. So you can see a pattern. It's not, if the formula were this simple, we wouldn't need to talk to Desi about it. But sometimes it's because there could be different enrollment trends in the K-12 district. A few years ago, the inflation factor built into the foundation budget was much bigger. So in any event, I just dropped these breadcrumbs so I can look back and remind myself, okay, this is kind of funky. Why is this like this? But anyway, so the ask, essentially the ask here is for a reduction of about $110,000. So that is the number that's spelled out in greater detail in this other packet here. And and so where we go from here is meetings like this around our district, and then we start Our school committee certified they certified the budget at a meeting I was at just prior to coming here, which is it's a formality. It simply sets the ceiling, because we can't be handing these out to folks as you plan your budgets and then say, oh, we want to go back and add another 20 grand. So that sets the ceiling. The number can come down, but we're obligated to certify our budget 45 days before the earliest town meeting in our district. You win.
Which is us.
You win. Yeah. And that's where we go to secure a budget. It's at least 6 out of 9 towns to secure a budget. Thank you for listening to that. Do you have an interest in going through this other document, or this isn't the... I'd be happy to field questions individually another time, Madam Chair.
Does anyone have any questions? I think we've met a lot with you this year, too, so we've had a lot.
You again, as Scott said. That's right.
We've had a lot of...
But it's always a pleasure.
Oh, indeed.
Yes, and glad it's all
But after 8
moving
o'clock,
forward.
I don't know.
That minus 110,000 eliminates some
You like that
questions.
part, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yes,
turned into
yes.
Charlie Brown's teacher after
Right,
that. Whatever. Yeah, and again, this is the volatility. Next year, it'll be, sorry, guys, but it is tied to enrollment. So thanks for listening. I appreciate it.
We appreciate your time.
Yeah, very
Tom,
good.
And
Good to see you all.
good luck with everything.
Yeah, I'll see you in April.
Yes,
the
you
meeting.
will. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, moving right along, that brings us to update from the town manager.
Yeah, just status quo. Probably, I'm not sure what night that you have me. Looks like it's in 2 weeks. And I think we'll have a better update for you then. We'll be talking trash. We'll be talking,
We won't be trash talking, we'll be talking trash.
trash.
Yes, talking about trash.
I did confirm with Amy over at the senior center that we do, that we will hold our forum, our trash forum,
Okay.
there on the 26th.
26.
And my anticipated time would be 6 to 8. We'll get a lot of that information out starting next week. Meeting with our consultant, where we do have our town meeting webpage up and running now. We don't have a lot on it yet, but the selectmen closed the warrant on Monday night, so you'll all get a copy of the draft warrant. We'll get it up fairly soon on the website. And we'll just continue to go from there.
All right. Any movement at all in anything with state numbers?
No, I haven't seen any change on that yet. I don't, and again, we're
No
not.
buzzing, no?
No, I'm not hearing anything out of MMA or any, we asked the senator and the representative to come to one of the selectmen meetings, so I think that'll be the end of March. But it may be March 10th or the 24th, we're just trying to coordinate with them to try and get an update and a feel from them. I do know that they always do support us and do as much as they can to push through, and there's just a lot of other powers that be out there that are
Right.
wrestling.
Anyone else have any questions or?
No?
All right, so we aren't meeting next week. We don't have any correspondence because I did not check them. Does anyone have a liaison report? No. We do not have any meeting minutes to review right now. Our next meeting is scheduled for February 26th. We'll have health, the treasurer, town manager, and we'll talk about trash. If anyone thinks they can't be at that meeting on the 26th, let Matt know as soon as possible. That way we can make sure that we have a quorum. Anything else? Anybody else? Motions?
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second it. Sorry.
All those in favor? Aye.
Greg, you good with that? He's giving us a big eye.
Yeah. Greg, I'm sorry, Greg, did you have any questions now that I've adjourned the meeting?
I mean, I had a lot, Barbara, but I don't think we can bring the meeting back, so I'm good. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for signing on.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Greg, for being able to sign on it so that we could get a quorum. It's appreciated.
Yeah, no, you guys are the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Greg. Have a good night.
All right,
You too, thanks.
and we are adjourned? We are.